And then think about what I just said before I started this. And if a man thinks it, a man will achieve it. That is true. That is the power of the mind, but it's also the weakness of the mind because the mind can be manipulated. And if we don't stand up and think about the powers that persuade, I don't stand for that. That doesn't meet my standards. I'm not letting it infiltrate my life to cause
Mhm.
influence. Welcome to Empowered Homefront Podcast, where we talk about health, wealth, and relationships. And let's not forget about the most important one, and that is faith. Because I believe that we all been lied to, and we're going to skill stack our way all the way to success and bring you on the journey with us.
Today, we are going to be talking about the evolution of masculinity and is today's, quote, sensitive man losing ground? And with that, Eric, what's up, buddy?
Yo, sensitive men losing ground. What does that mean?
Yeah, dude. So let me go ahead and read this little blurb I have real quick, and then we'll get to talking about it,
Yeah.
So, so essentially, I was thinking about the definition of like masculinity, what it was. Like back in the early days, masculinity was working in a damn factory. You had a beard and you chopped wood and all that shit. And obviously technology and stuff were getting a little bit further. And like, being the provider, like looking at dads like they come home and just sit on the couch, get away from me, versus now like dads are more involved. And as a society, we're switching to being sensitive and sharing feelings and having mental health days from work when like you stub your toe and shit like that. And I was sitting in bed last night thinking about it. It's like, you know what? I have something written out for this. Let's talk about it. So, some notes I wrote here that I'm going to blur out or speak about, and then we'll get into the the discussion points. So, I truly believe a man is worth his actions rather than his words. And I think you and I can both agree on that. Like actions speak louder than words. A man shall provide for his family no matter what. We're allowed to have emotions and, quote, be sensitive, but how far is society actually taking that? Because I don't want to bottle things up inside. I know that what it does to me, it destroys me. And I'm sure that you've got plenty of experience with like keeping things bottled up inside and not speaking about it. Yes, mental health is important, but how far do we take it to where it starts developing excuses? Like, dude, I've called you on the phone plenty of times where it's like, man, I'm tired and all this shit. Like, what do I do? It's like, dude, you got to keep fucking going, man. You got to keep going. Have some discipline, keep going. Look, what's your end goal, stuff like that. What do you actually want to provide to your family? And, I feel like this, everybody is suddenly like a psychiatrist or a psychologist on Instagram, and they're like diagnosing things like, oh yeah, you have trauma and stuff like that. And I feel like all that trickles down, and I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of all that stuff, but it kind of fits in with what what we're going to talk about today, And the first thing I think we should discuss is action over words, like what that actually means. And I think it reinforces, the idea that a man's worth is defined by his actions and commitment for providing to his family and actually saying he's going to do what he's going to do rather than just what's that old saying? Like, you can talk the talk, but are you going to walk the walk, you know? And, it's rather just intentions or words. It's actually showing up and doing things. So yeah, man, go ahead. Lead us off. I've spoken enough. I want to hear what you got to say about that.
So let me clarify like what you're seeking though. Are you talking about like the pressures of life and how men handle it, or are you talking about more of like how society coddles men for during pressures of life? Like what exactly are we talking about?
I would say all of that. Sorry for not being totally clear with it. There's a lot of talking points that we can bring up in this, but the first one I had, like I said, was action over words. Like me, I have fallen into the trope and the thing of, yeah, I'll take care of this. But then it's like, oh man, like you did a lot today. Why don't you go ahead and take a seat and take a rest? And then that starts spiraling out of control, and it becomes, oh, this guy's not going to do it. Like he's just going to say he's going to do it, and it never gets freaking done. You know?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to get at. Like I haven't personally encountered it with Erica yet, and Axel's still young enough to where like I haven't, but I've done it in the past plenty of times where it's like, oh, that guy's just talking smack. Like he's not going to do it. And now, granted, you've experienced this with me where I'm like, yeah, dude, I'll get that done. And then 5 days later, you're calling me like, hey, man, where you at on this? And it's like, yeah, dude, I'll do it. So I know that you've personally dealt with that with me. And I know it probably has pissed you off a little bit. But at the same time, it's like, I don't think I don't, I'm trying to make that change and I see how it affects other people. And I just want to know, like, have you any point like in your life, have you ever dealt with that as well? And how have you handled that? Like, where have you ever been to the point where you were in your past were like, yeah, I'll do it, and you never did it? And if there was like a changing point where you're like, I got to be a man of my word, I got to actually do things.
Yeah, I mean, I find this to be like a very complex question because there's too many variables, right?
Yeah, well,
And
let's break that down then.
yeah, I mean, you can easily look at somebody and be like, "Oh, well, you said you're going to do this and you're not doing it. Like you just don't ever do anything. You don't ever follow through with anything."
Mm-hmm.
But then the question is like, okay, like they didn't do that one thing. Are they following through with something that you don't know about? Right. And then you got the opposite side of that where they said they was going to do something and they didn't follow through with it and they didn't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So which side of the fence are we on? One side of the fence, let's talk about the worst case where, you're just not a man of your word. And like you said you're going to do something and you don't follow through with it. Well, dude, you can't fix that, right? Like I can't fix that, right? And I mean, I know I've got upfront contracts with you about working with me. I'm like, dude, this is business, bro. Like
Yeah.
we had to do it. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm your friend, but at the same time, like, dude, no, this is business. Like,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, and
uh,
I didn't want to make this like solely about you and mine relationship, but just like in general. I used me as an example to try to hopefully get the listener to understand what I was getting at.
well, I got a point with that business thing, right? Because this, even with my wife, um, you get married and you say, until death do us apart, right? And that used to mean something.
Mm-hmm.
Nowadays, divorce is becoming more and more acceptable. Me myself, I do not believe in divorce. Lori doesn't believe in divorce, and that's the reason we're not divorced. Because I promise you, if we believed in divorce, we would have been divorced a long time ago. Like we
Mm-hmm.
would have not have made it. But because we both agreed that divorce isn't an option, we keep fighting, we keep pushing forward, right? And there's merit to that concept, that merit of we have standards and we abide by our standards. And I think if we dig into that a little bit, what really happens is people don't stand for anything anymore. Instead, they stand for, well, society accepts this, so I'm just going to lower my standards and I'm going to accept this too. And then the side effect of them continuously accepting lower and lower standards, they have no standards, right? It's like whenever a man bends to the will of the weak, the man becomes the weak, right? And you can't get past that, man. And as far as like the fight, the internal battle that we constantly have of being overwhelmed and having crap to do all the time, that never ends. Matter of fact, I've already had 4 conversations this morning with my own team about
Mm-hmm.
overwhelm, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like right now, we're hustling. We got a lot of things moving and it's stressful, right? I'm stressed. I've taken my anger out on my team and then I've got to turn around and I'm like, that wasn't their fault. It was actually mine for not being a good leader. And I quickly acknowledge that and I say, hey, listen, this is the reason. This is what mistake I made. I accept ownership for that. And by accepting ownership for it, it doesn't like remove the thing I did wrong. It's just a fact of, will it happen again? Right. And that's the struggle that we constantly have to do. It's just like, okay, well, if we say we're going to do this, do we accept the fact that it was wrong? And if we do accept the fact that it was wrong, are we going to do the same thing again? It's like with a kid, they, walk up and, punch their brother or whatever and hurts them out of anger and then
Mm-hmm.
make the kid go and say, oh, I'm so sorry. Well, you force the kid to apologize. Does the kid even understand the importance of apologizing? Because what are they apologizing for? Right? Are they apologizing because they actually punched the kid and they feel bad for it? Or are they apologizing because you deemed it to be their punishment to force them to go apologize for something, right? And what I mean by that is if it's the latter, if you just force the kid to go apologize, they're going to go do it because that's what they was told to do, and they don't want to get in trouble. But it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
They're going to turn around and punch them again later, right?
Yeah.
But if they understand the consequence of that, and if they understand, okay, hey, like I punched my brother and it really hurt my brother. I don't like hurting my brother. So therefore, I will not do that again. And then they go apologize on their own. Well, now you're getting somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And that same battle happens internally with each and every one of us, right? It's
Yeah.
just like me right now. Like I'm constantly struggling by putting in all this time, building businesses and then, putting in time, spending time with, my kids and then also health, right? Like exercising and eating right. And it's a constantly battle. And like right now, like I am truly failing at the health side of things, right? And it's
Dude,
just like, my
I know.
gosh, bro.
I
Like,
feel you on that so much, man.
yeah.
Telling
But
myself for 2 weeks to build a program and I haven't done it. I'm like, yeah, you gotta just go in the gym and do
you
some
don't even
push.
have to build a program, dude. Like it's pretty simple. Like so, I,
I
I
know.
went through that too, right? And this is another thing. People think they need things in order to accomplish something. You don't. What you need to do is take action.
Yeah. And I tried touching on that in the beginning, or just like, just do. Like, you know what you need to do, just do
But
it.
it's way more complicated than that.
Do you think it's way more complicated, or do you think we overcomplicate it? Because what you just said is, you know what you need to do, just get it done. Like, you don't need a program. So like, you have the tasks in front of you, just get them done. You
Yeah,
know that.
it's way more complicated than that.
Yes, to an extent. Like,
All right, this is what I mean by that.
yeah, please.
So if someone's failing and they constantly get down on themselves, and then you're just like, dude, just do it. It's
Mm-hmm.
simple. Do it. To us, outside looking in, it's that simple.
Mm-hmm.
Internally, it is way more complex. They're battling with something,
Yeah.
right? They're battling with thoughts or tiredness or whatever that mindset is. And that's the reason it's more complicated. It's not that the actual thing is complicated, it's that they're battling internally with something. And it's just like, okay, well,
Mm-hmm.
have you set your priorities? Have you set your what's important to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because whatever you do is what's most important to you,
Dude,
right? So
I've
like
actually,
me with health, right?
yeah.
Getting the business going and where I want it to go is way more important to me than my health. Because if it wasn't, I would be spending more time with my health.
Yeah. Dude,
And
I've
I
been going,
accept that.
you said something. Two things I want to touch on real quick. Just now is like I've had this thought in my head. Like, I have my book right here. This is the book I write in and do that like 5 daily tasks thing, the power list or whatever. And I stopped and I was like, I need to get my priorities straight because I feel like I'm bouncing back and forth. Like, what are you doing things for? You know, is it for you? Is it for your family? Is it for you, as, a business partner? Like, is it, to whatever the end goal is? Like I haven't, I'm being honest to you and everybody listening. Like, I need to go back and rearrange, or not rearrange, actually journal my priorities out. Like, what is it? What am I doing all of this stuff for? And I think when you have that and you have that like written down, you can see it. The pen and paper don't lie. And it's a very powerful tool. And it's it's on my list to do today. But of course, my priority list wasn't a top priority as I'm doing other stuff. So it's kind of like it's asked backwards, and it's funny, like the internal
Let me
struggle.
ask
Like,
you a question on that though.
yeah, absolutely.
All right. So you just said two things. One was a powerless thing, which
Hmm.
is this tool that Andy Frisella gives you, right?
Yeah.
And Andy says it works.
Excuse me.
Andy says it works for him.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And then you said, well, priorities, and I need to, write my priority list, right? Those two things got one thing in common, very much in common. And like without, dragging the conversation out, is clarity.
Yeah.
Clarity is what we're really searching for. The reason
Mm-hmm.
power list works is because it gives a man clarity on what he's doing every day. The
Absolutely.
reason you sitting down and auditing your life and writing out your goals and priorities is because it's clarity.
Dude, that's a good word right there. Auditing. I'm using it. That's a
Yeah.
great one to use. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then I want to backtrack a little bit and get your brain going on this. So you mentioned constantly and everything else that we've done, like society's expectations or society's bias or society's influence. That's a big one we've discussed, especially on from your end. You love talking about that, and I'm 100% behind it. Um, so with this big topic trend thing coming up where it's like, oh, take a day off, take a mental health day. So taking some notes here. So society is saying it's okay if you're stressed to take a mental health day. Like businesses, I've seen it everywhere, are like offering this. Like it's not sick leave, it's not annual leave. It's like,
Is this a real thing?
yes, it absolutely is. You can Google it, dude. Mental health day is a thing.
This is
So,
interesting.
what I want to get into that is people. Do you think that? So when someone they're like, "Oh, I have this, so I don't have to go to work. I have a mental health day." Do you think that starts becoming the norm because then people have an excuse to say that they'll do something, and then when they realize that they have to actually get the task done, they go, "Oh no, I'm too stressed out. Let me take a mental health day." And that's where that spirals out of control, where their words mean nothing anymore because you're like, "Oh, if I give this person something to do or they say they're going to do it," like the new norm developing is like, "Oh, if you're stressed, just take a day off. Like nothing will ever get fucking done." You know? And I think that spirals in and that gets confused with real stress and real emotion that you're feeling to where you're just constantly like, oh, I don't feel like it anymore. Like, oh, I'm so traumatized or I'm so stressed out over this. Like I have a project to do. And it's like you never get anything done. And I think that right there is so fucking toxic because that is starting to alleviate responsibility on stuff. Like any responsibility you have, I feel like you can just like throw up like a red card or white flag and wave it and go, you know what, I'm done. I can't do this. Like I need a day.
Yeah. So
I think that is what's taking away from where that is the new norm, where you and me both believe in like, hey, if you say you're going to do something, get it done
well, I
versus just
think
maybe.
I want to be a little bit like creative thinking on this and dive like deeper into it. And what I mean by that is, let me first start by saying a quote from a Napoleon Hill. If the mind thinks it, the mind will achieve it.
Mm-hmm,
All right. So keep that in mind as I kind of set the stage for this. But if the mind thinks it, the mind will achieve it. And then think about all these things. So in this year is 2024. We just went through 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, which has been more separating society than ever, right? I mean, dude, like we can go back and compare this to any time frame in history. And as far as the division that has occurred is insane. Disagree or agree with me on those times, and who knows? Like that's just a thought. I don't even know if it's right or wrong, right? As far as the division, but either way, the division now is massive. And then think about what I just said before I started this. And if a man thinks it, a man will achieve it.
mm-hmm,
And that's the power of the mind. That is true. That is the power of the mind, but it's also the weakness of the mind because the mind can be manipulated through
mm-hmm,
marketing. And if we don't stand up and think about the powers that persuade, there is two polar division states, right? You've got far left, far right. right? And I'm not talking about politics when I say that. I'm talking about you've got people who believe that the mask saves lives. You got people who believe the mask are the stupidest thing ever. You got people who believe the vaccine saves lives. You got people who believe the vaccine is going to kill you, right? Like there are two polar opposites on each
Mm.
one of those things. Whenever it's so far divided, and then you got marketing running into that, where all of a sudden they're seeing it on TV, on social media, and they only see one side of it, right? They don't see the other side. And because they don't see the other side, it is really up to them if they realize that there is an other side. And if they don't realize there's another side, anytime they're presented the other side, immediate division,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah. One thing you didn't mention that I know you can go down a giant 24-hour discussion about is the effect it had on businesses, the division of businesses and like the wealthy man. I think that took a huge leap
Well,
into,
marketing, right? So, bring that up.
yeah, like they make
Small
it like,
business owner, right?
mhm.
Small businesses, gyms, all these people shut down completely. But yet, big corporations, fine, run all day long.
Yeah. And what I was getting at too is the division of, what was the big discussion point? Like, oh, tax the rich more. And we've talked about this before, where it's like, I feel like the division that they're creating is like, oh, these people have so much money, so they need to pay more taxes. Well, it's like you don't know what it took to the blood, sweat, and tears to create that business, and then that trickles down into, oh well, you know, I'll never be able to do that, something like
Yeah.
that, or like,
Well, I mean, with taxes, dude, like that's a whole nother story, dude. I don't even want to like tap into that. But like to the point though, right? Like what I'm saying is we have to really be cautious of what we allow to influence and infiltrate our minds because
yeah,
we are easily manipulated.
yeah,
But if you just own the fact that you are easily manipulated, now you decide what will manipulate you. So you
hmm,
can manipulate yourself. If you
yeah,
want to be stressed out and you say you're stressed out, you're stressed out.
yeah,
If you want to
yeah,
be happy and you say you're happy, you're happy.
yeah. I love that auto suggestion, or yeah, auto suggestion, I think it's called, or self suggestion that he has. Um,
Yeah.
because it does. When I feel like shit and I go back and I'm like, why am I doing this? I even mentioned it, I think, in the beginning. I'll get sucked in. Like, you and me use social media as a tool, you know?
Yeah.
And granted, we have our own personal accounts and stuff like that we fool around on. Yeah, that's fine. But I have to be honest and say that I get sucked into these things where I see these people that are like, oh, I made $1 million. Here's how to make $1 million in a month using this method. Or you see people are like, oh, lose fat, lose 40 pounds of fat in 30 days. And all these influencers and stuff online, I feel like even though that the message is supposed to be positive, to me, sometimes it has a negative effect because it's just like, I'll never achieve that. And the one thing I want to roll that into is combined with the auto suggestion and stuff like that. It's so easy to take the easiest path, I guess you could say, of like, oh, I'll never be able to achieve that because it's easier to sit down and make excuses for not doing something.
Yeah.
It's easy to say, oh, the news said that, so that's what I'm going to believe. Oh, that's what that ad said, so that's what I'm going to believe. I don't think, as like I said, I wanted to, like, men, I feel like it's my duty to research things. I feel like it's my duty to put in that work to go, you know what, what's the
You
other
don't e-
side?
you don't even have to research things to know things are wrong. Right?
Oh
Like
yeah,
you
I
don't.
agree. But I still want to deep dive and see like what the other side is.
Well, too, that's how drama gets created, right? So what I choose to do is I just don't tolerate it. Because what you tolerate becomes
Mhm.
reality.
Yeah,
What you
yeah.
tolerate becomes your reality, right?
Mhm,
So if all of a sudden you start seeing these things come across the screen about mental health days, well,
mhm.
now because you see it come across, well, that becomes your reality unless you just don't tolerate it, right?
Yeah.
So like me, like if somebody mentions mental health days, I'm just not even going to acknowledge that it exists because I don't want any part of it.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
If, you know, um, you can name any topic, but that's the way I handle it, right? It's just no. Like I don't stand for that. That doesn't meet my standards. I'm not letting it infiltrate my life to cause
Mm-hmm.
influence.
By you having standards and standing up and putting your foot down and saying, I'm not participating, I'm not letting X, Y, and Z outside influences affect me. Look what you're doing right now, man.
Mm-hmm.
Businesses. You're constantly around your family. You're not reporting to quote the man or whatever you want to say. You're not limited to 9 to 5. You
Yeah.
know, you're working a lot harder than you were at ATC. Absolutely. Like, and I think you can agree with that.
Oh yeah.
But at the same time, you have what's the one thing that we try to talk about in Empowered from Homefront? Like, you have all been lied to. Let's break away from the chains of society. Let's stomp these myths into the ground. Like, not to like brown nose your ass, but
I think
like
it should
you're an
back.
example. You're an example right now.
Yeah. I mean, I appreciate that. Yeah. I mean, I appreciate you saying that. And I think that's what we all should be. And I think times are starting to shift now. Um, like Tennessee just put in a law saying that there's no other flags hung in the schools except for the American flag, right? There's some place just put in a thing where they can start handing out whoopings to kids again, and the parents have to sign off on it. But like things are shifting back, dude. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what's great about this. But what makes things shift back is by people just getting fed up and just saying, "I'm not acknowledging this even exists. This is
Mm-hmm.
this is what I stand for." Right?
Yeah.
But as soon as you start tolerating it, as soon as you start talking about it, it becomes reality,
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if I talked about the gymnastics incident we had.
With that woman who wasn't with her kid or whatever. Yeah, you got content out there about it. It's out
Yeah, I
there.
mean, that was absolutely asinine,
Yeah, it
right?
was mind blowing.
Mind blowing, dude. And the
Yeah.
kid now is completely removed from our team, and now he's got to go at another team. But this is what's crazy about it, though. The owner of the business continues to tolerate it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. It was up to me, one man, that stood up, said something politely. I handled it in a good way. Did it
Mm-hmm.
ruffle some feathers? Absolutely. Did
Mm-hmm.
I get called into a meeting and I was the bad guy at the beginning of the meeting? Absolutely. But by the end of the meeting, all I did was show them the handbook. And I was just like, look, y'all are not following this. So I had to stand up and do your job for you. Right. And
And
then
the
that toilet bowled. And now every other family in there, every family that's on our team stood up and they backed me because they know it's right. And because I took a stand,
mm,
now it opened up the door for them to take a stand. And
yeah,
then 2 weeks later, now that child, instead of like being corrected, whatever, like I don't really care. It's no longer my problem because he got physically removed and put on to another time. So like my kids never see him anymore,
yeah,
which fine with me, dude. If the gym wants to tolerate it, like I'm not there to run your business. You're just not going to infiltrate my family.
yeah. I like that you mentioned that too. And with the tolerance, and this again goes hand in hand with excuses, saying you're going to do something but you don't do it. Like the actions or speak louder than words. Is how many times have you? I know I've done it, so I'm not going to say you've done it. How many times have you been put in a situation where it's like, man, like if somebody, hey, they like somebody cuts in line, like, hey, somebody should tell them they can't cut in line, and nobody does it. It's like socially acceptable for someone to turn around in line and go, oh, hey, I'm running late. Like, do you mind? Like, is this okay? Well, you've already completed the action, so it's like how many people are going to say, no, 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 get the hell in the back of the line. Like we all inherently know what's morally good or not. Like as humans, you can go across the pond and ask them if they think stealing is wrong. They're going to say, well, yeah, stealing's wrong. We all have this internal moralities of stuff that we know is wrong. But what it takes, and you just provided a good example of this, is someone that stands up as a leader. And you stood up as a leader in that situation. You said, hey, I'm not tolerating this. I don't care what that kid and that family's got going on. Like, this is what's supposed to be happening, and it's affecting every other kid on the team. So you're going to let the 5% affect the 95%?
Yep.
No, absolutely not. And the fact that some people just need a push. I think some people need a push to have a little bit of that courage to
Well,
stand up.
people want to be led.
Yeah, I agree.
That's
I
People
agree on.
to be led.
But at the same time, I still think that when there's somebody who takes a stand and they show leadership, and you and me both know about that from being in the military,
Yeah.
one person can take a stand and then all of a sudden people get behind them and they're like, hey, that's it.
Only if
That's
it's done the right way.
correct. I absolutely agree with you. And the fact that you did it correctly is the fact why other people are like, you know what, I don't tolerate that. And they got a little bit of courage and and the thing is, that could possibly be such a huge positive influence on those other families that maybe they start enacting that in their own lives.
Yeah. Well, they
And
did. Yeah, they did.
yeah, and that's
Yeah.
amazing. That is a clear-cut example about how you sat there and you said, you know what, I don't think this is right. And instead of just like
Yeah.
sitting with your thumb up your butt and saying, running your mouth, talking out the side of your neck, you actually put some action towards it. And now when people see you again in that gymnasium, they're going to know that you stand for what you believe and that you'll actually do something, when you say you're going to do it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like I'm absolutely respected, right? And I think that's what you just said, right?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah,
Not
yeah.
that, dude, but I had all of the kids come up personally tell me thank you without their parents, right? Whenever I confronted the mom, one of the kids looked at me and told me thank you. My
Mm-hmm.
son told me thank you afterwards. Then after the fact, I had dads text me telling me thank you. I had
Mm-hmm.
moms saying, "Oh, thank you." Everybody said
Mm-hmm.
thank you. The only person who was upset to me was the one family,
Yep.
but I don't care because I'm not going to tolerate them. I didn't attack them. I just said I'm not going to tolerate your actions. And I think that's one of the things that need to really be understood. Like whenever you take a stand for this, and I think it's not taught. So teaching it, how you do that is you remove the drama,
Mm-hmm.
right? And what you do to remove the drama is you go edit to a point of this is what I stand for and this is what I don't stand for. And
Mm-hmm.
what is happening goes against what I stand for, right?
Yeah.
And remember when we first started this conversation, you're talking about writing down your priorities
Mm-hmm.
to find clarity.
Yeah.
That's what
Yep.
we need to do as humans, right? And when you
Mm-hmm.
talk about people want to be led, people want to be led because it's easy. They get clarity. So
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden, if they start seeing all of this, what'd you call them? Stress days, um,
Mental health days.
mental health day. All of a sudden, they start seeing all these mental health days. They find clarity in saying, "Oh, it's okay now.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's doing it. I'll just do
Mm-hmm.
it too."
Yeah.
Right? And then a side effect of that is 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road, however long it takes.
Mm-hmm.
Now all of a sudden it's the norm. But
Mm-hmm.
then what happens is you accept what comes your way until it gets so unbearable that then all of a sudden you want to start complaining about it. And it's
Yep.
too late.
Yep. That brings up something I wanted to talk to you about as well. So with the mental health days and you standing up and taking a tactful approach to resolving that situation at gymnastics, the one thing that I constantly see, and I've been a part of it too, me as a person, I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, if you haven't seen this or if you don't think it's true, the whole just speak your emotions thing. I feel like that shit's gotten so out of hand that what we need to be taught, because you said nobody's taught, what did you say? You said nobody's taught how to stand up for themselves or like have standards or something. It was along the lines of that. So sorry if I'm putting words in your mouth, but it was something along like that. That's what I heard. What I think needs to go hand in hand with that is we need to teach people how to regulate their emotions when confronting things like that. Because
Well,
if you like, if you say you and me have a problem, and I come out and I'm just like, you, Eric, like you're a piece of shit. Like all you do is just like push me around, or like you're a dumb, you're stupid, you got a fat face, or whatever. And whether or not there
I've been
was,
told all those things before. So.
but the thing is, but the thing is people come out and explode like that. But if you actually sit there and go, okay, why am I stressed out and why am I angry about this?
Yeah.
Why am I upset about that? When you can actually, and this is the part where I do support the whole sensitivity thing, because if you can sit there and you can connect with yourself and internal, like have that meditation period where you go, let me take a step back and not blow up about this because I want to stand up for what I believe in. I think this is where people on both sides of the division spectrum just start pointing and yelling instead of having that that moment where they go, okay, I'm angry, but why am I angry? Okay, I got all my thoughts in order. Let's go have a civil discussion about this and actually get somewhere.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what you did, because I know damn well you were probably very pissed off at that whole situation. But you didn't go in there with your middle fingers in the air saying, this is how it's going to be. I'm stomping my foot. Like, you're a terrible parent. You know, I feel like that's gotten out of
Even
hand
though
too.
that's what I said, right? I mean, I was like immediately told that I was telling her how to parent,
Mm-hmm.
even though that's not what I told her, right? But I get where you're going with this, right? And one thing I want to point out is like you have a unique situation, right? Like your personal life is a unique situation with what you have going on. If you want to talk about that, like we can talk about it next show or something. But
Yeah.
like that is not what I'm talking about because that is so unique. But whenever you talk about normal circumstances of people getting up, providing for their family, right? I don't want to say going to work. I want to providing for your family because that's what a man's supposed to do. You're supposed to provide for your family, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're supposed to love your wife, love your kids, love God, right?
Yep.
So if that's what you're doing, well, and you're stressed out about it, I mean, you need to handle your shit,
Yeah.
right? If you're overwhelmed because you're providing for your family and you're overwhelmed because you got to love your wife and love your kids, I mean, if you're one of these guys that needs a mental health day, like something's wrong with you, bub. Like, I've got to run. Lori just looked in the door.
Yeah.
But
Let's
like,
go
to
ahead.
my point,
Yeah.
yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, to my point, man, like, there's variables,
Yeah.
right? So to one circumstance, what are you stressed about? Because if you're stressed about providing for your family,
You shouldn't have had a fucking family.
well, no, you just need to accept the fact that that's life.
I'm a little bit more harsh when it comes to that, I guess.
Well, my message is like you need to accept what's really happening. Do an audit and then figure out what you need to accept and what you don't want to tolerate.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And like I said, your situation is unique, right? But for most people who are going out here and providing for their family and living their day-to-day life, however your kids act, however your kids respond, look at them. Because if they're acting in a way that you do not like, most likely it's because they learn from the best, and that's you. Right?
Mm-hmm. And I think with that, man, we can wrap this episode up.
Let's roll.
Anyway, we hope you guys liked that episode, and thanks for sticking around and listening to us talk about all the stuff we talked about today. If you want more, you can go to empoweredhomefront.com and see what we have to offer there. And if you want to check out the podcast more, we are on Spotify, iTunes, and YouTube. And if you want to go to the website there, it's empoweredhomefront.com/EHF-podcast. So go hit that follow, go hit that subscribe, and share it because we know that plenty of you guys will find this information valuable. And until next time, see you.